The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. It's another edition of The Big Issue. And as usual, I'm your regular host. And with me in the studio, our in-house analyst. And of course, it's very good to have Chibuzo Kaibe back. Chibuzo had been away for some time. And of course, we're having him here again today. You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, we have a security expert with us here in the person of Ejike.
Thank you.
And the big issue of the day is the attacks on INEC offices nationwide and concerns over the 2023 polls. Well, there is growing concern in the country over incessant attacks on the offices of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in the country. The latest being the bombing of the Commission's office in Imo State on Monday. This, coupled with the alarm raised by INEC that politicians are buying PVCs for the electorate, has created apprehension among Nigerians about the fate of the 2023 general election. The attack in Imo on Monday left no fewer than 5 persons dead, including 2 policemen. And this is the third attack in 12 days on the commission offices in that state. INEC, on its part, raised the alarm over what it described as systematic and targeted attacks on the facilities nationwide ahead of the 2023 general election. And of course, INEC is saying that politicians are now buying PVCs from voters, piling them up ahead of the forthcoming polls. This and the attacks on INEC facility has raised serious concern within the country and among the international community, where the United States and the United Kingdom have expressed concern over the recent attack on the offices of INEC in the country. One would have expected that at a time when from the southeast we have a formidable candidate in the person of former governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, contesting the 2023 poll and being one of the popular candidates in the contest. What would have been gotten from that region is mobilization and support instead of attacks that seem as if there are, just according to INEC, systematic plan to scuttle the 2023 polls. What could be the reason for this? Because most Nigerians think it goes beyond the IPOP thing. For it to have been intensified just few days, or you can see months, to the election.
Well, thank you. First, I think this issue of attacks on state institutions, particularly INEC offices, is one that has assumed a pattern. And I don't want to limit this to just the southeast now, because we've also had instances of attacks in, I think, Ogun and Osun. So I think it's beyond just the southeast at the moment when it comes to specific attacks on INEC offices. So I think there's a pattern, and the pattern clearly would mean that people don't want the elections to hold, or they want to create panic, such that they make the process a bit more difficult for INEC to handle. Because there's no way such attacks will happen that some logistics and some equipment won't get damaged, and there will be need for replacements and all of that. But much more is the psychological effect of such attacks. But I still think that such attacks have happened enough for the security to understand the workings and the patterns, and at least to be able to have um, perhaps some system to probably preempt as best they can such, attacks as best they can. Of course, they can't, have a total uh, um prevention of these things, because they're always going to be perhaps one step behind, because the person attacking is always going to be, is likely to have, one step in front going into such. But at least the security should be able to have an understanding of the patterns and how to, engage them and ensure that they don't make maximum damage, as it were. But as for Peter Obi as a candidate, the only thing he can do, like he has done, is to keep, urging all of the other stakeholders to ensure that, they address the issues, encourage people to come out, not to be deterred, not to be cowed by these actions, to come out, get their PVCs, and make sure they come out and vote. We saw what happened in Anambra during the elections, the governorship elections, where there was so much tension in Anambra State over the general elections. People braved it, they came out, and they proved that yes, we determine our fate. They came out, participated in the process. Yes, there was a need to shelve it, to postpone. I think to postpone the elections at some point, but the people came out in good numbers and they showed that when they rise, minority, being those who want to cause havoc, will have to bow.
Well, thank you, Chubuzo. Okay, from the security side, at least we have to give it to the police. Because yesterday, the police killed 3 of these gunmen. And now we don't know how to even categorize them. We have always been knowing that whenever there is operation in the southeast region, they always target unknown gunmen. At least that effort yesterday showed that at least the police is not actually resting on its oars while this is actually going on. But what an effort so far to identify, trace, and really know the people perpetrating this act.
George, I think this topic is actually very disturbing because a developing country like Nigeria at this stage, because I use a developing country because I know that is the excuse of you, we shouldn't be talking about this kind of thing. And we should be growing, not going backwards. We've done elections in this country, we've had successful elections without these things. Even around we're stopping so much in the notice. They were not going after INEC facilities and trying to score. They will threaten the election, but you will never see them bombing or trying to destroy INEC offices. So what is happening is the pattern. And I'm beginning to believe that politicians are involved. I don't want to see it as or IPOB or all this. Politicians, somebody is bankrolling these guys that are doing this thing. And they have something in their mind, which is either to reduce the vote of that area where they are attacking, to ensure that people don't come out, to ensure that people's PVC and everything is condemned, to ensure that people have fear in their mind, even on that day of election, to say, no, I don't want to be killed. But on the other hand, what are security agencies doing? You just say that they killed 3. What is happening to preempting the thing before it happens? I mean, this thing has been happening over 1 to 2 years now. I remember last year, we did something on this, attack on INEC offices. It's not something new. Why is it that we don't have enough security men to guard INEC offices the way we are guarding other important places? We're talking about election. We are moving materials now. Though they said non-sensitive material and have not started going, but we are moving material. We have PVCs in some places. We have cubicles and all the offices, and they are bombing them. It's going to create a problem. Why are the security agencies not doing not guarding these offices with everything they have. That is why I'm troubled. Because the way we are going, at the end of the day, leadership newspaper did something on 11 million votes threatened in the next election because of this problem in the southeast alone. At the end of the day, you may not have enough votes from this region. What is the implication? You talk about Ogun and Oshun where they attack, but it's not common. It's mainly rampant. Not our north, not our north central, northeast where they're attacking. No, it's only the southeast that they are targeting as if there's something there. And that is why I'm beginning to think that he has a way, he's targeted at P2Bs. Maybe they want to reduce the vote from his region or something like that. I am being careful not to be a supporter of P2B, but if you look at the pattern, you understand that this thing has some connotations. So security agencies need to sit up and need to ensure that these offices are properly guarded. If you know that the offices, you cannot protect it, move these materials to government houses. Because since we've been hearing of attack, nobody has attacked government houses. Move the materials to government houses and keep it there. When you are ready to protect, you go and protect them. But you know, when you say that now, they will say the governors will now have an opportunity.
It's just like when you now say you carry granite and give to rats.
But for you, but at the same time, if you cannot secure the place and people are coming to bomb it anyhow, it's not better you leave it there. When you start moving the sensitive material, maybe then I think they are not doing enough. That is my honest opinion for now.
Thank you very much, AJK. I would say JK has actually raised a salient point there. And of course, we will be taking a short break. By the time we come back, we'll begin to look at some of the points raised by AJK. And of course, as we do so, we hope that our viewers will contribute constructively to the conversation on the big issue which borders on everybody, all Nigerians, because this is the time when Nigerians should be preparing to effect a change in government for the better. In the past years, there has been cries about the change they promised, and now it is time to actually address that change and see whether we could change the change. There are plans to scuttle the electoral process that would have enabled Nigerians to change the change they said they did not bargain for. Don't go offline, we'll be back in a moment.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Welcome back. We're still on the big issue in Leadership Podcast. And of course, the big issue of the day is the incessant attack on INEC facilities across the country and the growing worry over the fate of the forthcoming 2023 general election. Chibuzo, you've heard what Ejike said. Ejike said that in as much as we've had some pockets of attack in places like Osun and other, the attacks on INEC facility is mainly happening in the southeast. And that has even raised concerns about what Nigerians, even from that part of the country, are saying could be a ploy to disenfranchise the electorate in the region by reducing the number or by destroying their PVCs currently in INEC offices just to render them useless when it comes to do with the electoral process. Don't you see this too as a possible way of thinking? Because now, according to reports exclusive by Leadership newspaper today, it said unless urgent steps are taken by the federal government, over 11 million voters may be disenfranchised in the 2023 general election in the southeast due to the worsening security situation in that region. It calls for worry, and of course, we could see that the Labour Party came out yesterday to react. And this goes to show you that concern aspect, the assessment in the region is real. In the process and in the ongoing attacks, if it reaches one point, they might declare a state of emergency in that region, and it might now amount to postponing or suspending election in that region. That is where all this amounts to. Should we say this is just something that is targeted at the region, or it's something that has to do with plans to scuttle the entire electoral process? If it is about scuttling the entire general election, why is it that the attacks are too pronounced in the southeast region?
Well, I do agree that at this stage, there's no taking anything off the table, because all we are dealing with now are hypotheses on what will be the cause of all this. Other than the fact that we know that attacks are going on, they are still, all we can do is speculate as to what the intent
Might be.
because we are looking at very different variables playing out. Before now there were unknown gunmen, even though the government has seems to be wrecking havoc. There's been the IPOB, thing playing up, and now we are having the elections coming up. There've been multiple attacks before now, series of attacks on police institutions. There was a major one, and that really shook the whole place. Now I'm talking of, we're now, and it's unfortunate that over time there has not been a clear, precise arrest and clear profiling. When I mean profiling, I mean, precise naming of people responsible for things.
The act.
All we keep hearing are, politicians, unknown gunmen and all of that. There was a time even the Imo State governor came up and said, he was going to make a declaration as to the people involved. He made so much noise about it. At the end of the day, it came down to the whole issue of, it became a political issue, let me put it that way. And there was no clear idea of who we are to hold. So this has been the problem. So it has remained hazy as to the profiling of who is actually responsible for this. And that is why many people think, okay, the federal government ought to step up its game, because it now comes down to what the federal government should do. Because they are the final authority on this. If any day they decide to say this has to end, clearly it's going to end. So that is at one point. And INEC, when I say the thing might affect the general elections, I think I'm only putting what the INEC has said. Because INEC has often and repeatedly said, there are plans to scuttle this election. So these are cries being made by an institution who knows better. There's no other institution now that understands the danger to these elections being caused by the security and saying this. But again, the focus comes back to the federal government and the security agencies to step up their game. We have preached enough to politicians, on how to behave and how to conduct themselves, to play within the rules. the code of what's that thing? The peace accord has even been signed. You know, every moral solution that has been done with regards to how politicians should behave. But it does appear as if, you know, they are set in their ways to ensure that they win at all costs. So at the level of moral suasion, yes, they might continue, but I think it has to be taken a notch now. The federal government and the institutions whose responsibility is to ensure stability so that a proper election can hold need to step up their game. They have to do clear-cut arrests, clear-cut profiling, naming these people and doing proper procedures so that it serves as a clear statement to not just to Nigeria, but to the international community that we are ready to have proper transition so that our democratic processes are sustained and preserved. You know, we can't afford a destabilization of the Nigerian system at this point. It's not going to be helpful, not just for Nigeria, but for the broad, you know, geopolitical regional thing in Africa.
West African region.
Exactly. So we can't. So I think if there's ever a legacy Buhari has to keep, and he has been saying this, that he wants to leave a legacy of, you know, proper elections and all that. This is the time he has to prove it. This is calling out the president directly. This is the time he has to really prove it and show. Thank God he's in the US as we speak with other African leaders, and I think the whole focus of that discussion is about how to, you know, deepen US and African ties to ensure that, you know, they do business properly, they do democratic, you know, all of that, you know, nice things. This is the time he has to really prove that, okay, yes, I want to ensure that this happens. And it starts with how he handles or tackles this problem of strategic attacks on state institutions. He has to show that, you know, by the time he comes back from that meeting.
Thank you very much. Ejike, you see what Chibuzo has said. Of course, what he just said boils down to one thing: the political will on the part of the government at the center, to nip this thing in the bud. For instance, look at the NNPC, the fuel crisis, where as soon as the president stepped in, summoned the NNPCL and sat them down, we discovered that 1 point something billion liters of fuel from nowhere was released. Secondly, the DSS invited oil marketers, sat down with them, and told them standing that, look, if this continues, we will be forced to track down some of these oil marketers that are creating artificial scarcity just to make gains out of it. And that means they will lose their filling station because we seal them and then pick them out to Nigerians who are ready to do business and to render services to the people. As soon as we heard that, go to the filling station in Abuja and Lagos, save for some states where at least due to the distribution and the tankers are moving, they have not gone reach all the states. Abuja and Lagos now there are no fuel scarcity. That is what the kind of thing we look as political will. Now, when it comes to insecurity and such attacks, I think if the security forces, the police in this case, comes up and say, okay, we must take decisive action. Just like yesterday, we saw them killing 3 of those gunmen in the southeast. There is no way you would tell me that in a country where we now have technologies and people can easily track down certain persons, if the police really wants to do their job, they will not do it. But it appears as if the police especially is treating issues of insecurity in the country with kid gloves, especially where at the end of the day, we have never seen the police operating in a particular place and then take the operation successfully without the support of the military.
I think we are just expecting too much from the police. That's the fact. The police in Nigeria, maybe abroad, they've done better, but in Nigeria, when we had insecurity in Kaduna Abuja Road, nothing, they could not do anything. Even when they would be on the checkpoint, the people will come and attack close by you, call them, they will not go. So this one in the southeast is even more difficult to handle. So I personally, I don't believe they can do anything except, like you said, there is a strong political will with threats following it. When we had president like Obasanjo that will call the IG now, I want this thing to be resolved today. If you don't resolve it tomorrow, you see him removing the IG and putting another person. When you have that situation, that is when people will be afraid and people will be walking. But when you know that the person that is giving you that tip will not do anything, they will always say it and they will relax. And nothing will happen. So I'm not expecting too much. Honestly, I believe that towards the election, by January, February, DSS, Army will come up more and be fully involved and will have a little bit of sanity. Because they have the ability, the police have the ability to monitor, like I said, they have the equipment, they do it. Are they doing it? Are they using it? Are they doing it effectively, or they're just monitoring the one that concerns the big men? So these are the issues. But when you now have a serious somebody that gives a directive, I want this thing addressed and addressed fast, you will be serious. There is no strong political will, and the police that we have in Nigeria, they are not ready. I doubt if they are ready to do it. If you leave this thing for police, 2023 will come, and on that day there will be killings and there will be bombings in the southeast, and nothing will happen.
Thank you very much, Ejike. Finally, and Chibuzo, we look at this idea of politicians buying PVCs from voters. Well, we begin to wonder, these PVCs are just something that is just useful to the individual carrying that card. I think there are chips. When you go for card readers, I think what this card reader entails is that it will bring your face. They will know that, okay, you're the owner of this PVC before you vote. The politicians buying these votes, so I don't know what they do. These PVCs, I don't know what they want to do with them. They're keeping those PVC, they give another individual to now go vote. How can that be possible? Because at the end of the day, I thought INEC would have actually I think what INEC has in stock in terms of this PVC is a way, something that card reader will really bring out the face of the owner of that PVC.
Specific to you.
Specific to you, and then thumb printing. So what is the idea of this buying of PVC?
So perhaps it's just to mop it off the system so that people don't get
Still,
people don't
still another
don't
plot to
engage the
franchise.
process. They don't have it.
They don't have it.
So they buy it off you, and but like I said, politicians will politicians, or desperate politicians will be desperate politicians. No matter how much you preach, they will do what they think will be in their best interest, no matter how ruthless and selfish it is. So that is why you have institutions to check such behaviors or such crime. So the question goes back to those who ought to do what they have to do. There's a place for technology, in handling some of these things. Maybe we can improve on our technology in ensuring that these things, can be properly checked. Perhaps we'll get to a time where, we might not even need cards to, do elections. You can just go and, put your eyes somewhere and do some, some funny thing, so that nobody has to take some particular thing off you and deprive you from engaging the process. Maybe we will get to that point. But maybe too, we have to get to a point where we need to do more voter enlightenment, education and all of that, so that people really understand the magnitude of the actions they take. When you sell your voter card, it's more like selling your birthright or something. So people need to understand the import of that action. That it's beyond giving out that, you are giving out your rights, you are giving out your ability to demand better for yourself and for your community. Maybe when we begin to do more of that kind of enlightenment, perhaps it will help. But much more, where we are now, the institutions of state should ensure that people who buy these things are tracked. Because I do believe, like my Oga here said, if the DSS is allowed free hand, to do its intelligence work the way it can do it, I am sure all of these politicians buying all of these things, they will track them. and they will
Bring
get
them
them
to
arrested. But the problem is the political,
Yes,
hindrances
we do that.
they face when the institutions face when they want to do their work. Before you know it, one person will come and say, "Oh," but I think that is where we are at the moment. It comes back to the state institutions. If they want to track these politicians who do these nasty things, I think they can.
Well, thank you, Chibuzo. INEC has said that despite the attacks, it will go on and hold the 2023 general election as scheduled. That is a good one, and of course, that is brave enough. But in doing so and showing that it is bloody bold and resolute to actually undertake a free and fair elections, INEC should also have a plan B in the event where these attacks would have affected most of its materials in its facilities across the country. And of course, even with the PVC buying by politicians, I think INEC has to sit down and come up with a plan B in the event where the technologies deployed are being scuttled by the attacks and the politicians who might be trying to mop out these voters, permanent voters cards by buying them off from individuals who ought to have gone to the polling unit to cast their vote. INEC must come up with something that will be an alternative means of voting if it's actually going to walk the talk, that it will proceed with the elections, the incessant attacks, and all the plots by politicians notwithstanding. That is the much we can take for today's edition of The Big Issue. Thank you for keeping tab with us out there. And of course, we must applaud you, our viewers, for always staying tuned to Leadership Podcast and The Big Issue. And of course, our in-house analysts, I will not fail to thank them for addressing the big issue which borders on every Nigerian as far as the 2023 elections is concerned. A platform provided for we to choose our next leaders in the country. Well, join us same time for another edition of this program. Tomorrow, for now, have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.